Do you want to know how movie stars in the 1920s spent their free time? In this video, I'm going to show you some of the most interesting and unique ways that the old Hollywood movie stars relaxed and enjoyed themselves. In the 1920s, movies were all the rage. People would go out in droves to see their favorite actors and actresses on the big screen. But what did these movie stars do when they weren't filming or attending red carpet events? Surprisingly, they had quite a few interesting hobbies and pastimes. So step into my time machine and let me show you what it was like in the 1920s. Thank you, Established Titles, for sponsoring this video. So every year I always like to give my dad a really exciting and unique Christmas gift. Usually I give him unique vintage items, but this year I was excited to gift him an established title, and I thought it would look perfect in his library since he collects a lot of old things in his library, and I thought it would just add the perfect finishing touch to his library. Established Titles is a fun and novel way to preserve the natural woodlands of Scotland while helping global reforestation efforts. It is a project based on a historic Scottish custom where landowners are referred to as lords and ladies in English. Title packs give you at least 1 square foot of dedicated land on a private estate in Edelston, Scotland, and an official certificate with a crest. Established Titles plants a tree with every order, and they work with global charities, One Tree Planted and Trees for the Future to support global reforestation efforts. You can officially change your name to Lord or Lady and get it on your credit card, plane tickets, etc. I know my dad will be excited about that, and I also got myself one, so I'm officially a lady. You can even get it on your dating profiles if you want to up your ante. And they even have couple packs that come with adjoining plots of land. The first 200 people purchasing a title pack using my link will effectively be next to my plot within a few minutes of walking distance. Depending on how many of you want to become a lord or a lady, we can build our little Laura Jane Atelier kingdom. And it makes an amazing last minute gift, and I got it for my dad for Christmas. So if you're trying to think of something unique to gift, Established Titles is actually running a massive sale right now. Plus, if you use the promo code LAURA10, you get an additional 10% off. So go to establishedtitles.com/Laura10 to get your gifts now and help support my channel. And thanks, Established Titles, for sponsoring this video. And now let's jump right back into my main video. The 1920s, a time of flappers and speakeasies, of Gatsby and Prohibition. It was a time when film was first becoming a major force in entertainment, and Hollywood was its glittering epicenter. But what did the movie stars of the golden era do for fun? Well, they sure knew how to party. The 1920s were a time of endless nightlife, and many Hollywood stars were regulars on the nightclub circuit. They would dance the night away at places like the Cotton Club and Coconut Grove, often joining in impromptu jam sessions with the house band. When they weren't busting a move, they were probably sipping on some illicit cocktails, or if they were feeling particularly wild, they would do prohibited drugs. But it wasn't all fun and games for Hollywood A-listers. The 1920s were also a decade of intense studio competition. As movie moguls fought for control over the rapidly growing industry, this led to long hours on set and grueling publicity schedules, leaving little time for anything else. However, many stars found ways to make the most of their situation, using their clout to secure better roles and salaries. In fact, it was during this decade that the idea of the star was first truly born. The 1920s was a time of great change in America. After the First World War, the country experienced an economic boom, and new technologies like the automobile and the telephone were revolutionizing the way people lived. The 1920s was also a time of great social change as women won the right to vote and prohibition came into effect. Life in America during the 1920s was very different from life today. People tended to dress more formally, and social gatherings were often quite formal affairs. There was a greater emphasis on leisure activities like dancing and going to the movies, and parties were often quite lavish affairs. Women were starting to take on more visible roles in society, and prohibition meant that people had to be creative if they wanted to drink alcohol. Overall, the 1920s was a time of great change. It was a time when new technologies were changing the way people lived and when social norms were starting to shift. For many people, it was a time of great excitement and opportunity. The 1920s were a decade of change for women in particular. For the first time, many women were working outside of the home and enjoying newfound freedoms. But what did they do for fun and leisure in the 1920s? One popular activity was dancing. The Charleston and the Lindy Hop were all the rage, and women loved to show off their moves on the dance floor. Movie theaters were also a popular destination as they offered a chance to escape the everyday grind. For many women, the 1920s were a time of fun and freedom. And while their leisure activities may seem old-fashioned by today's standards, they helped to define a new era for women. The 1920s was a golden age for Hollywood, and some of the most iconic movie stars of the time emerged during this decade. Many of these stars were women, and they captivated audiences with their beauty, talent, and charisma. Some of the most popular female movie stars of the 1920s included Clara Bow, Greta Garbo, Joan Crawford, and Louise Brooks. These women helped to shape an image of femininity that was both strong and elegant. They also paved the way for future generations of female movie stars. While the 1920s was a time of great change for Hollywood, these female movie stars left a lasting legacy that still resonates today. American actress Clara Bow, who lived from July 29, 1905 to September 27, 1965, was a popular figure in early sound and silent era cinema. Despite having an 11-year career on the silver screen, Bow was a pioneering performance and sex icon in Hollywood. Her iconic performance in the 1927 film It gained her the status of the It Girl, which she still is referred to today to rising stars. Early years and professional beginnings. Brooklyn, New York is where Clara Bow was born. She was the third child, but the only one who survived through infancy. Bow's mother was prone to violent outbursts, one of which she put a knife to Bow's throat, and suffered from seizures, which were reportedly brought on by a teenage head injury. Clara Bow's father also subjected her to physical violence. Bow was a frequent moviegoer and dreamed of being a famous actor on the silver screen. Partially as a way to get out of the house, Bow's show business career started in 1921 after she took first place in a talent contest that was published in Motion Picture magazine. Beyond the Rainbow, a 1921 drama, was first released in February of that same year. However, it appears that some versions of the movie omitted Clara Bow's scenes. Of course, the sequences were re-added in the re-release that followed Bow's success. In her subsequent movie, Down to the Sea in Ships, Clara Bow gained further recognition for her role as a tomboy. She had supporting roles in 4 movies in 1923. Then in 1924, she was featured in Grit. In order to resume her acting career in Hollywood before Grit was released, Bow relocated to LA and secured a deal with Preferred Pictures. The It Girl's rise to fame once in Hollywood, Bow's career took off right away, especially after she played a flapper in the 1923 film Black Oxen. She gained popularity with the public and appeared in as many as 15 pictures in 1925 and 8 in 1924, thanks to Preferred Pictures' lending of the actors to larger studios. Preferred Pictures filed for bankruptcy at the end of 1925, and its creators, B.P. Schulberg, received an employment offer from Paramount Pictures. Bow accompanied Schulberg to the larger studio. Clara Bow received the moniker that has since become a show business legend thanks to the 1927 movie It. Clara Bow plays a girl working at a department store in New York City who draws the attention of her high society boss in the movie. The film was a traditional Cinderella tale. The huge success of the movie cemented Clara Bow's status as the biggest screen star of the period and earned her the moniker the It Girl, which is still used to characterize rising Hollywood starlets. She played the major role in the military movie Wings, which took home the inaugural Academy Award for Best Picture that same year. Clara Bow was the highest paid celebrity in the business in 1928. Bow was underpaid despite the fact that she made a lot of money at the box office, produced a lot of movies, and sold millions of fan magazines. Bow kept working on cutting-edge projects for the film industry. A scene in her 1928 film Red Hair was produced using an early Technicolor technique. The movie's title refers to the fact that it was the first and only to feature Bow's well-known red hair in color. Although the movie is gone, some color footage is still around. The wild stories that circulated about Clara Bow's on-screen sex symbol persona were almost as legendary as her movie office success. The Coast Reporter, a tabloid publication, published the sexiest of these rumors. The brutal conclusion of one Coast Reporter article read, "You know, Clara, you'd be better off taking your life." The publisher of the Coast Reporter, who attempted to extort Clara Bow, eventually served time in prison for blackmail. The most, if not all, of the rumors were untrue. The stories nevertheless damaged Clara Bow's reputation. She became associated with Hollywood's wickedness in the public mind, and as a result, she frequently found herself rejected by other actors and even by her own studio. So it sounds like the 1920s version of being cancelled. Despite the skepticism of the allegations, Bow's reputation as a scandal-ridden star was established when the tabloid reports were rehashed in Kenneth Anger's infamous 1959 book Hollywood Babylon. Clara Bow originally adapted to sound films without any problems, despite her discomfort with her strong Brooklyn accent. The Wild Party, her first sound movie, was a great sensation in 1929, mostly because people wanted to hear her voice. Bow's box office popularity started to diminish over the following 2 years, and the numerous moralizing allegations about her personal life had a negative impact on her mental health. She relocated to the Nevada ranch owned by cowboy movie star Rex Bell in 1931. That year saw their marriage and the birth of their 2 boys. Clara Bow made 2 films for Fox before departing momentarily for Hollywood. In 1933, her last movie, Hoopla, was released. Bow's mental state deteriorated when she retired. In 1944, she made many attempts to take her own life while in institutions. Clara Bow returned to Los Angeles following the loss of her husband in 1962, where she continued to live a largely private life until her passing in 1965. Bow had an 11-year career and starred in more than 50 movies before she was 30. She was likely the first actor to act as a box office draw and is recognized as one of the biggest stars of early Hollywood. Clara Bow says, "I became a regular tomboy, played baseball, football, and learned to box." So she loved playing sports and was very athletic. She was a difficult cookie, Clara Bow. She had a difficult childhood, and living in poverty in Brooklyn didn't make it any better. She was a tomboy at heart, despite how glamorous Hollywood would come to perceive her as. She excelled in track and field in high school and played baseball, tennis, and other sports. She also had a strong passion for football and tried to attend as many USC Trojan games as possible. She would host the entire football team at her house at the conclusion of the football season. She was viciously accused of doing more than just entertaining them with food and drinks. She did once date Morley Drury, the USC quarterback, but in reality, she was merely a fan of the game. The incident did have a negative impact on Clara Bow. and she sued the rumor's originator, her secretary Daisy DeVoe, in court. Roller skating was another pastime of Clara Bow's, and you might have seen her skating up and down her driveway in old photos. And next we have Greta Garbo. On September 18th, 1905, Greta Garbo was born in Stockholm, Sweden. The secretive diva, Garbo started her career in Europe before moving to the US at the age of 19 to work for MGM. Before World War II, she was popular with American audiences in both silent and sound movies. She received 4 Oscar nominations and later won an honorary award. Greta left school at the age of 13 to take care of her father, who had become quite ill. He passed away from kidney failure 2 years later. Greta vowed to lead a life free of financial difficulty after being severely touched by the strain her father's illness and eventual death imposed on the family. Greta found employment as a salesperson in a Swedish department store after the passing of her father. Greta modeled the apparel in a pair of commercial shorts to help sell the men's clothing brand. Her first role came soon after because of her natural acting ability in the comedy Peter the Tramp in 1922. Greta was given a bigger chance after being awarded a scholarship to Sweden's famed Royal Dramatic Theatre, the top training ground for prospective performers. Greta met Maurits Stiller, the top silent film director in Sweden, only after a year of schooling because he wanted the young actors to play the lead role in his next movie, The Legend of Gösta Berling in 1924. Garbo became well known as a result of the movie's popularity in Germany and Sweden. It also cemented a relationship with Stiller, who would transform her professional and personal lives. She received acting coaching from Stiller, who also persuaded her to adopt the last name Garbo. Garbo's stardom in Europe grew with her following movie, Streets of Sorrow, 1925, in which she portrayed a potential prostitute. Louis B. Mayer, the head of production at MGM, was also interested in the movie. Mayer wanted Stiller to work on the movie in the United States with one requirement: Garbo had to go with him. The flamboyant filmmaker agreed to a contract. Mayer reluctantly signed her to a contract as well. In 1925, a 19-year-old Garbo landed in America. She had arrived suddenly, and from the get-go, she displayed reluctance to interact with the press or divulge any information about her personal life. She bluntly remarked to reporters during her first interview, "I was born, I had a mother and father, I went to school, what does it matter?" In The Torrent, 1926, Garbo's debut American picture, she played a Spanish peasant with aspirations of becoming an opera star. But the anticipated Hollywood collaboration between Garbo and Stiller never happened. After being rejected as the director of The Torrent, Stiller left MGM and went to Paramount, where he once more ran into issues with his superiors. In 1928, he went back to Sweden. He passed away just a year later. Garbo was MGM's most valuable resource. 13% of the business's 1925 to 1926 profits came from her first 3 films. Garbo was aware of her leverage and was always conscious of the financial struggle she had growing up. After a contract dispute with MGM, Garbo, who had threatened to leave for Sweden, was able to negotiate a new deal that granted her unparalleled control over roles and the movies she appeared in, while paying her a record $270,000 for each picture. In many respects, Greta Garbo embodied a brand new kind of Hollywood actress, one whose vulnerabilities, sexuality, passion, and mystery combined to appeal to both male and female audiences. Her fashion sense also altered American fashion, and the public's fascination with her was only increased by her seclusion. She gave her final American interview in 1927. The development of sound put MGM in a difficult situation. There was genuine reluctance to let viewers hear Garbo speak. Despite the fact that the future of movies was evident, executives feared that her accent and low, throaty voice would detract from her star power. In 1930, Garbo made her sound screen debut in a film adaptation of Eugene O'Neill's Anna Christie when MGM finally gave in. She released Romance the next year, and both films received Academy Award nominations. Despite MGM's worries, Garbo's star did not diminish. In Susan Lennox, Her Fall and Rise with Clark Gable in 1931, and in As You Desire Me with Melvyn Douglas in 1932. She appeared in Grand Hotel, which won the Academy Award for Best Picture that same year, alongside an all-star cast that featured Joan Crawford, Wallace Beery, John and Lionel Barrymore, and others. Garbo's popularity at the box office started to decline in the late 1930s. The actress's cosmopolitan flair didn't appeal to audiences as much as it once did because America was in the midst of a Great Depression. Garbo withdrew into a secluded world that only a select few were allowed to see once she was out of the spotlight of Hollywood. She was in multiple relationships with at least one lady, but she never got married. She had a lot of interests even if she wasn't working anymore. Garbo enjoyed interior decorating and art collecting. She was able to freely spend her money since she had made wise investments throughout the years. She frequented antique shops, attended sales, and even created a rug for her apartment. She loved swimming and tennis, and she stayed in great shape throughout her entire life. She was a devoted theater goer who always had a love for acting and storytelling. Her life also included a lot of travel. She established a regular schedule, leaving for Europe in early June with friends like George Sclee and Cecile de Rothschild, and returning in early September. She traveled to California in the fall and winter to see old pals. She frequently stayed at her cherished New York apartment, which occupied the entire 5th story of the structure in between her travels. She enjoyed her alone time and followed a routine that included getting up early for yoga or meditation, having toast for breakfast in front of the TV, making calls to friends, shopping for fruits and vegetables, taking long walks in the afternoon, and eating dinner on a tray in front of the television in the bedroom. While much of Hollywood supported the war effort during World War II, Garbo faced criticism for essentially remaining silent. She made significant investments in art and real estate on the counsel of a friend. Her estimated net worth at the time of her passing was greater than $55 million. So, a lot of stars always end up wasting all their money, so it's interesting that she was so smart with it and basically didn't have to work most of her life because she was so smart. Garbo eventually moved from California to New York City, where she established a new life and developed a love for window shopping. Greta Garbo sightings would occasionally be recorded, much like UFO sightings. She hung out with the English photographer Cecile Beaton and fellow Swede and ventriloquist Edgar Bergen during the final phase of her life. Garbo's kidneys started to fail in the late 1980s, forcing her to quit walking and further isolating her from the outside world. She passed away on April 15th, 1990 in the hospital in New York City. And next we have Joan Crawford. Young Joan Crawford learned to dance before going on to star in scores of movies. She was a prominent celebrity in Hollywood throughout the 1930s and 1920s, winning an Oscar for the title role in the 1945 film Mildred Pierce. Later, she gained fame for the iconic horror film Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, and she passed away in New York City on May 10th, 1977. On March 23rd, 1905, Lucille Fay LeSueur was born in San Antonio, Texas. and that is Joan Crawford's real name, though some have reported her birth dates back to 1904, so we don't really know her exact year. Before she was even born, her parents divorced, and her mother eventually wed theater owner Harry Casson. As she grew older and on occasion throughout her career in entertainment, Crawford would start going by the name Billy Casson. Crawford attended 2 private schools after her mother and stepfather divorced. She worked on the campus to pay for tuition while also getting harsh treatment, including physical punishment for alleged transgressions. She couldn't attend classes because her workload, therefore her academic record was fabricated. Crawford only spent a short time at Stevens College before leaving to pursue her passion of dancing professionally. She finally performed as a dancer in the Broadway production of Innocent Eyes and began working for MGM in 1925. She appeared in a number of silent movies at the time, earning the name Joan Crawford through a studio-sponsored magazine contest. The actress became well known for her role as a wealthy girl who relocates to Charleston in the box office sensation Our Dancing Daughters in 1928. Crawford went on to star in more than 50 films throughout the course of a long and productive cinematic career. Crawford was one of the highest paid stars in the 1930s, but towards the end of the decade, her films were only moderately successful. Before leaving MGM and joining Warner Brothers, she bounced back with A Woman's Face in 1941. She eventually landed the main role in 1945's Mildred Pierce, a story of a mother who overcomes adversity to become a prosperous restaurateur. Crawford won the Academy Award for Best Actress after the movie earned multiple nominations. Over the years, Crawford would get 2 more Oscar nominations, one for her portrayal of a schizophrenic nurse in the 1947 movie Possessed, and the other for her performance as a playwright in the thriller Sudden Fear, which she also produced. She developed a following and became known for her unwavering dedication to her job and her readiness to adapt to various platforms. Crawford passed away from a heart attack in New York City on May 10, 1977, leaving behind a rich film legacy which would spur scrutiny for years to come. And Joan Crawford loved to knit. She says, "I took my knitting along so I could keep my hands busy because I was so nervous. The repetitive motions of a pair of knitting needles and some yarn as you knit and purl your way through a pattern can be very comforting, as any knitter will attest to." When Joan Crawford was waiting for her call, she was frequently spotted crocheting on the set of a movie. It eased her tension and kept her occupied when she felt depressed. According to rumors, Crawford intentionally irritated Norma Shearer by making a persistent clicking noise with her knitting needles while filming The Woman, 1939, so George Cukor temporarily banned her from the set. And next we have Louise Brooks. Louise Brooks was one of the most successful and controversial stars of the 1920s. Born in Kansas in 1906, she moved to New York City as a teenager to pursue a career in dance. After appearing in several Broadway musicals, she caught the attention of Hollywood executives and was signed to a movie contract. From there, she quickly rose to stardom, appearing in such films as Pandora's Box and Miss Society. However, her career was cut short by the advent of sound and cinema, and she retired from acting in the early 1930s. In later years, she became known for her writing and her outspoken views on the film industry. She died in 1985, but her legacy as one of Hollywood's most fascinating stars endures. Louise Brooks was a woman ahead of her time. In the 1920s, she was known for her sharp wit, her bold fashion sense, and her passion for life. Louise loved to dance, and she was an avid moviegoer. She also had a keen interest in popular culture and current affairs. Louise was always up for a good time, and she enjoyed spending time with her friends. However, Louise's true passion was writing. She was a talented writer, and she enjoyed crafting stories about the people and places she knew. Louise Brooks' hobbies and interests reflect the spirit of the Roaring Twenties. She was a free-spirited woman who loved to have fun and explore new things. When a reporter questioned her about her happiness, she responded, "Fame, fortune, and power, the things my peers yearned for were not what brought me joy. When I went to Rochester, that's when I finally started to feel a little content. Louise Brooks stayed there until her passing, spending her free time reading, sketching, and occasionally watching old Hollywood movies. According to her, she was enslaved by their habits and lived like millions of old people, but she also said, I was unbound. My mother had passed away, yet she was still there in me. Every time I read a book, she makes me feel comforted. While the 1920s were a decade of great change for movie stars, it was a time of relative stability. For the most part, they continued to live in the same luxurious mansions and to spend their free time in the same ways as they had in the past. However, there were a few notable exceptions. Some movie stars, such as Buster Keaton and Rudolph Valentino, became interested in auto racing and began to compete in events. Others, like Clara Bow, developed a taste for more exotic forms of entertainment and could often be found partying at nightclubs or attending glittering cocktail parties. However, the vast majority of 1920s movie stars continued to live relatively quiet and uneventful lives. When they weren't working on a new project or attending a gala event, they could usually be found relaxing at home with their families or friends. And thank you so much for watching, and let me know if you want me to cover any other decades. Alright, I'll see you guys again soon. Bye!